grab your favorite beverage of choice and settle on in. It's time for yet another book haul. Hello book friends, I'm Jen and welcome to my reading life, and today I am back with yet again another book haul. I have a few books to share with you today that I really want to get onto my shelves so that I can start filming for you all a tour of my bookshelves, which I know has been requested by quite a few of you. That should hopefully be coming soon. But for today, let us dive into the books that have recently come into my possession. A few of these I found at my local half-price bookstore. I think a couple might be from thrift books, and the rest I purchased online. Now I can't remember where. That's terrible. But at some online bookseller, I purchased the remainder of the books. But grab yourself a beverage. I'm going to take a sip of my tea and then we will dive right in. The first few books in this haul I know are from Half Price Books. I went there with my son a few weeks ago. He had some books to sell and I had a few books to sell, and so we also each picked up a few books as well. I have 4 books that I found at Half Price Books. The first is Mrs. Polifax and the Second Thief by Dorothy Gilman, and this is, I don't know, number 8, 9, 10. Somewhere around there in the Mrs. Polifax series. I am collecting all of the Mrs. Polifax books because, as you know by now, I love Mrs. Polifax. I think she is such a fun character, and I am really enjoying working my way through this series. And this one, Mrs. Polifax just has to shoot some pictures at a quiet funeral outside Washington and take them to Sicily. But like all Mrs. P's assignments, so ostensibly suitable for the CIA's favorite garden club member, this one quickly turns lethal. I'm not going to read any farther than that because I think there might be some spoilers from some prior books, but I am excited to have this one on my shelf. And then the next book that I picked up is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. And as you know, I have been a little bit intimidated by Virginia Woolf. Even though I have read one of her books, I have read Orlando, and I liked it. And I have a number of her books on my shelves. But I was listening to the Tea or Books podcast recently, and Rachel and Simon talked about A Room of One's Own on that podcast episode, and it just got me even more intrigued to read it. It's very slim, and so it feels less intimidating in that way. It's also a nonfiction, and for some reason, that seems less daunting to me than her fiction. I don't know. Anyway, I'm very curious about this one, and hopefully I will get to this fall. I would love to read this one. And I will link to the Tea or Books podcast episode in the description box below if you'd like to listen to that. That is a fantastic podcast, and they always compare 2 books, and I forget which book they compared this one to. I believe it was a more modern novel, but it was a really interesting discussion. So if you've read this, you should definitely listen to their podcast. Then the next book that I found is one I've never even heard of, but since I have been busy reading through the Little House books this year, I thought I would pick this one up. And this is West from Home, Letters of Laura Ingalls Wilder, San Francisco, 1915. This is edited by Roger Leigh McBride, historical setting by Margot Patterson Doss. And it says on the back, in 1915, San Francisco was alive with the excitement of a great World's Fair, the Panama Pacific International Exposition. Laura Ingalls Wilder came to San Francisco at the urging of her married daughter, Rose Wilder Lane, to visit the city and to see the marvelous attractions at the fair. Laura, who as a child had traveled through the Midwest by covered wagon, now made the trip from Missouri to California by train. Since her husband Almanzo could not leave the farm, she wrote long letters to him to share the excitement and wonders of her trip. These letters, discovered after her death, reveal the active curiosity and warm personality of the woman who was later to write the classic Little House books for children. Well, this sounds delightful, and I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I am very curious to read about Laura Ingalls Wilder's experiences here in San Francisco. Can't wait to get to this one. I think I might read it when I finish the Little House books, the ones I have in my possession, which I don't believe is the entire series, but I have, I think, 3 or 4 left to read. Then the next book I picked up this was kind of a cover by, kind of a, I know this author, I'm not sure why, but I feel like I've heard people talk about her, and because it was a Virago Modern Classics edition, I decided to grab it, and that was Mary Webb's Gone to Earth. And I still can't remember exactly why Mary Webb stands out to me. I think she's most famous for Precious Bane, but that doesn't really jog my memory. Anyway, the back of this says, the daughter of a Welsh gypsy and a crazy beekeeper, Hazel Woodis is happiest living in her forest cottage in the remote Shropshire Hills, at one with the winds and seasons, protector and friend of the wild animals she loves. But Hazel is a beautiful young woman, and this beauty draws her relentlessly into the orbit of human life. Her innocence is an irresistible magnet to men, to Jack Redden, the local squire, and to the gentle minister Edward Marston, who offers her human love, human sexuality. Hazel's fate unfolds as simply and relentlessly as a Greek tragedy, as this child of nature is drawn into a world of mortal passion in which she must eternally be a stranger. Sounds a little dark and deep, but I am here for it. Gonna give it a try. Has anyone read this or read any other books by Mary Webb? Can you tell me anything about her? I think I might need to do a little research before I dive into this one, but sounds interesting. The next book is one that I picked up from Thrift Books, and it is a book that I have really wanted to own and read for a really long time. I've heard so many good things about it, and that is Nellas Last War. And this is the second World War Diaries of Housewife 49. I hope I don't need to have read Housewife 49 first. Maybe. Anybody know? Do I need to read Housewife 49 first? I'm gonna have to look into that. Anyway, I've heard so many good things about this. It is written in diary format, and in September 1939, housewife and mother Nella Last began a regular diary that lasted for 30 years. The account that she left of life during the Second World War is moving, fascinating, and unique. While Nella's younger son joined the army, she and the rest of the family tried to adapt to the transformed rhythms of life in Barrow and Furness, which suffered terribly from enemy bombing raids. Writing each day for the Mass Observation Project, Nella grows in confidence as a result of her new work, and her diary entries tell a powerful story about the war years, covering everything from sex to the genuine fear of invasion. This was the period in which Nella turned 50, saw her children leave home, and reviewed her life and her marriage, which eventually she compared to slavery. This is the war as Nella last lived it. I am definitely here for this, and it sounds fantastic. The rest of these books were purchased online. Again, I completely forget where I got these, but it's neither here nor there. The first two books are from the Furrowed Middlebrow imprint by Dean Street Press. I am collecting all of the books in this series, or imprint, as you want to call it. And I picked up these two recently because, if you haven't heard, Dean Street Press has given new life to the Furrowed Middlebrow imprint. They're going to be continuing to print new books, and I am so excited. I have so many to read, and I love collecting them all, and I'm excited to have these two new ones in my collection. And the first one that I recently purchased is Near Neighbors by Molly Clavering, and I believe this is about a spinster, which is perfect because I am going to be participating in Spinster September, which is run by the lovely Nora at Pear Jelly on Instagram. If you're not following her and you are on Instagram, definitely give her a follow. She's so lovely. I will link her Instagram account in the description box below. Last year, for the first time, she hosted Spinster September, and it was just your invitation to read books featuring spinsters. And I just love that theme as an idea for picking books to read, and I've already picked 6 books that I'm considering reading for Spinster September, but I may have to add this one as well, and I'll probably read 1 or 2 in September. That's kind of my goal, and I will share those in my September TBR, but you get a sneak peek with this one. And this says, Shy, uncertain Miss Balfour is still finding her way after the sudden death of her domineering sister Belle, who, following a failed marriage many years ago, had returned home and made a career of browbeating her meeker sibling. Her memorable final words were, "Don't be a fool, Dottie." But Dorothea soon begins exploring her newfound freedom, observing and then becoming happily enmeshed in the doings of her neighbors, the widowed Mrs. Lennox and her 5 unusual and charming children with whom Belle had always forbidden contact. Domestic challenges, romantic difficulties, and efforts to aid a painter's abandoned family all are facilitated by Dorothea's calm intelligence, and before long she has drama of her own, from her spontaneous rescue of an endangered child to her encounter with Belle's long-lost husband, from whom she learns some surprising secrets. Anyway, Molly Clavering was friends with D.E. Stevenson, and I adore D.E. Stevenson, so I have very high hopes for this one. It sounds like maybe they might have influenced one another's writings. Yes, this sounds just lovely, and I love the cover of this. So beautiful. And then the second book that I purchased that is from the Furrowed Middlebrow imprint is A Chelsea Concerto by Frances Faviel. Faviel? Not sure how you pronounce her last name. And this is a memoir of the home front during World War II. I didn't realize when I started this video that I had 2 books that were memoir diaries from the home front during World War II. And the synopsis of this says, Frances Faviel lived in Chelsea before and during the London Blitz, having become a Red Cross volunteer when World War II began. Chelsea was particularly heavily bombed, and the author was often in the heart of the action, witnessing or involved in fascinating and horrific events through 1940 and 1941. Her memoir evokes an unforgettable cast, Londoners and refugees alike, caught up together in extraordinarily dangerous times, not forgetting the green cat, a Chinese statuette, standing on the author's windowsill at the home's talismanic protector. Frances Faviel's memoir is powerful in its blend of humor, tenderness, and horror, including the most haunting ending of any wartime memoir. Well, that sounds just fascinating. I was prompted to pick this one up because when I read that it was a nonfiction memoir about the home front during World War II, and I have read Spam Tomorrow by Verily Anderson, which is another book in the Furrowed Middlebrow imprint by Dean Street Press, and I loved that book. It was one of my favorite nonfiction books the year I read it, and it was actually a little bit humorous, just the way that Verily writes about her experiences. I think this one is going to be more somber in tone, but I'm still very intrigued to read this one. And then the next book I've picked up is a modern classic that I have been, again, wanting to read for a long time, and that is Stoner by John Williams. And as you know, I really love books set in schools, colleges, universities, about teachers, about academia, any of that, which this most certainly is. It says, William Stoner is born at the end of the 19th century into a dirt-poor Missouri farming family. Sent to the State University to study agronomy, he instead falls in love with English literature and embraces a scholar's life, so different from the hardscrabble existence he has known. And yet, as the years pass, Stoner encounters a succession of disappointments. Marriage into a proper family estranges him from his parents. His career is stymied. His wife and daughter turn coldly away from him. A transforming experience of new love ends under threat of scandal. Driven ever deeper within himself, Stoner rediscovers the stoic silence of his forebears and confronts an essential solitude. So yes, I am very much looking forward to reading this, and might try to get to it this fall because I do love to read books in academic settings in the fall when it's back to school time, even though I'm not in school. And then next up, I have a book that is part of a mystery series, and this one is one that somehow I skipped over, and that is Started Early, Took My Dog by Kate Atkinson. This is part of the Jackson Brodie mystery series. I believe this is, I want to say this is number 3, maybe 4, not, maybe it's 3. There is going to be a new Jackson Brodie mystery coming out this fall, which I am so very excited about. And I thought, what better timing than to finish the series, which I somehow skipped over one of the books. And I'm going to read this before I read the new book. that is coming out. The synopsis of this is it's a day like any other for Tracy Waterhouse, spent running errands at the local shopping center until she makes a purchase she hadn't planned on. One moment of madness is all it takes to turn Tracy's humdrum world upside down, the tedium of everyday life replaced by fear and danger at every turn. Witnesses to Tracy's Faustian exchange are Tilly, an elderly actress on the brink of her own disaster, and Jackson Brody, who is in search of someone else's roots in the land of his childhood. Soon all three learn that the past is never history and that no good deed goes unpunished. Brimming with wit, wisdom, and fierce moral intelligence, started early, Took My Dog is Kate Atkinson at her very best. Very excited. I love the Jackson Brody series. Also, I don't think I mentioned this series when I talked in my video about book to screen adaptations that I really love, but the Jackson Brody mystery series starring Jason Isaacs is fantastic. It's very short. I think it just covers the 4 novels that were written, maybe not even, but it's still lovely. I think I've watched the series twice now. And then I have one last book, and this was, I don't want to say an impulse purchase, but kind of an impulse purchase, because I was thinking about family sagas that I love, and I was thinking about The Thornbirds, which I adore, and I'm planning to reread next year. And then I was thinking, what else has Colleen McCullough written? And as I went down that rabbit hole, I found this book, which sounds absolutely delightful, and that is Bittersweet by, as I said, Colleen McCullough. And the synopsis of this says, as 2 sets of twins, the 4 Latimer sisters are as close as can be. Although famous throughout New South Wales for their beauty, wit, and ambition, the young women are not enthusiastic about their limited prospects in life at the end of World War I. Each sister has her own dream. Edda wants to be a doctor, Grace wants to marry, Tufts wants never to marry, and Kitty wishes to be known for something other than her beauty. Together, they decide to enroll in a training program for nurses, a new option for women of their time. As the Latimer sisters become immersed in hospital life and the demands of their training, each must make weighty decisions about love, career, and what she values most. The results are sometimes happy, sometimes heartbreaking, but always bittersweet. This sounds so very good. Has anyone read this? Because please tell me it's good. Please tell me you liked it. Or if not, that's okay. I'm still going to read it because it sounds wonderful. And I loved The Thornbirds. And Colleen McCullough, I think, has written some other books that are much more like historical sounding. I mean, she's written about Antony and Cleopatra. She's written something called The Song of Troy, which as I think about Troy, she's written about Julius Caesar. So she's written quite a few things that I am not necessarily that drawn to. She's written a lot. This is a huge list of books. If anyone has read anything else by Colleen McCullough aside from this one and The Thornbirds that you recommend, please let me know, because I think she's a wonderful writer and I would love to read more by her. So again, this was a little bit of an impulse, but I'm excited to have it on my shelf. And that is it. That is my latest book haul. I would love to hear from you. Have you read any of these books, or do any of them sound particularly enticing to you? Where should I start? As always, I'm excited to have all of them, and I can't wait to dive in. Let's chat down in the comments about these books or anything else bookish that you'd like to discuss. And if you could give this video a like and hit that subscribe button if you'd like to see more bookish content from me. And I'll be back with another video very soon. Bye!